F1's calendar chaos is worse than you might realise. It's not just that we don't know where this season will finish, but it's impossible to commit to a start venue for the 2027 season or get the rest of the calendar locked in. Now, John Noble, there's a lot of moving parts here, so where shall we start? Where this season will finish and the threat of it happening in the snow? Where we'll start next year? Why we're still waiting on a 2027 calendar when the 26 calendar was published last June? There's a lot of chaos and backup plans and first choice plans and plan Bs and all those things to unravel here.
Yeah, this all relates to the situation in the Middle East, which is at best unpredictable, at worst may not improve at all. The difficulty for F1 is the Middle East races are, central to F1's commercial rights. A lot of income comes from there. They've been big partners for F1. So F1 itself wants to race in the Middle East. It proved impossible to start the season. We can't go back to Bahrain in October. We obviously announced the Bahrain Grand Prix taking place in Malaysia this October. But now we face uncertainty both about where this season finishes and, more importantly, as we've uncovered, the start of next season isn't actually locked in or cannot be locked in because we don't know what the situation in the Middle East is going to be.
Yeah, and this is not Formula One's fault. This is very much an external situation that Formula One is trying to respond to. They're determined to try and keep the calendar as full as possible. They ideally want 24 races. Probably won't quite get to that this year, given we've already lost some, but they are pushing on that and they want 24 next year. So looking at next season, because I want to know when to book my flights for testing and for the first race. The baseline plan is to have testing and start the season in Bahrain, isn't it? But how is that possible to commit to? What's the timeline for working out what's going to happen? And if it can't happen in Bahrain, where does it go?
From what we understand, that there's a plan A in place, which is if the Middle East situation improves, if F1 can be confident there's no safety issues, then the idea is to go testing in Bahrain end of February. We think the dates are 25th, 26th, 27th in Bahrain. And then that's followed up by the start of the season. It won't be Australia as this season. It's going to be in the Middle East. So the Bahrain Grand Prix was due to take place on March the 14th and Saudi Arabia 1 week later, March the 21st. Now, the difficulty is if the situation in the Middle East doesn't improve and we can't commit, then it throws all plans up in the air. And this has big implications because teams need to know where to send freight. They need to know how to get their car ready, when to get it ready, what are their production plans to be in place. So you can't get to the start of February, for example, and suddenly decide, actually, we can't test in Bahrain, we can't have the races, and the first race is going to be in April. It doesn't work. So you and I spoke to Stefano Domenicali this morning. He said there are alternatives in place. There will be 24 races. So what we think the most likely outcome is that if Bahrain is Saudi, you can't commit to it. If testing can't take place in Bahrain, alternatives are going to get slotted in.
So are we expecting this to be a Bahrain Grand Prix in country X kind of scenario like we've got with Malaysia this year, or is it just bring forward Australia and start there, or will Australia stay in its kind of position 3 on the calendar?
I think the most likely thing is Australia stays where it is. I think it'd be much easier and straightforward to slot in alternatives, whether it's 2 alternatives before Australia if the Middle East races don't happen, or 1. It wouldn't therefore impact teams' cost cap much. It wouldn't impact the production schedules very much. So if, for example, the Middle East can't happen, then potentially you could go testing in Barcelona. That's not unheard of. It's a good venue for testing. It would be quite easy to arrange very late. So you do your testing in Barcelona. Then you want a location, a grade 1 circuit at the start of the season in March that would make sense. And my best guess, why don't we go back to Malaysia to start the season?
Yeah, well, that's a popular venue. And if the Bahrain Grand Prix in Malaysia is a success this year, then why not do it all again? And you can keep the name as well. But it looks like we're going to be waiting a while, doesn't it, for the calendar? Because even if they do publish one, there's going to be events that are going to intervene and change things. And this must be the really difficult thing for Formula One, because as anybody who's followed the news over the past months knows, one day it looks like things are clearing up and then it all goes again, and we keep getting into this cycle of instability. So it's really, really hard to know where you commit. I guess it's just that policy, isn't it, of pushing everything as late as possible in terms of decisions. But as you've explained, you can only go so late.
Yes, Stefano said the calendar, the 27 provisional calendar, won't be published until the autumn. So we can think probably September, October time, just to give them the flexibility. But it's fairly clear they want a plan B in place. They need to know what the plan is. The teams need to know what the plan is and what the alternatives are. So I think they will push it as late as possible. They will hope that the situation in the Middle East clears up enough to commit to these races. But I think they won't want to push things very late. And the latest, we spoke to Pirelli last weekend about what are their timeframes for freight, for decisions. They say the very, very latest that you can commit to tyres is 7 weeks beforehand. So you start getting into the frame of 2 months before you need kind of decisions on where things are going. So I think we will know by the end of this season where the season opener is going to be in play. And then a lot obviously is going to depend on how that Middle Eastern situation develops, both for the next few weeks to decide what happens this year and then rolling on into 27.
Yeah, and of course we have to remember that obviously there's far, far bigger things at stake than F1's calendar with the situation in the Middle East. So that has to all play out. And I think the world has got more important things to do than worry too much about the Grand Prix calendar. But that is what F1 and we have to be concerned about. So when do you think we'll get clarity on this year? We know we've got the Malaysian Grand Prix. That's slotting in as the part of the triple header that's going to be Baku and Singapore as well. So that's set, the Bahrain Grand Prix in Malaysia. But how about the end of the year? What were some of the options considered? Because we know that the favourite is Imola in late November, early December, and I've been there when it's been snowing at that time of year, so that could be pretty high risk. But what were the things F1 considered for this, and when do we expect that to be locked in?
So Stefano says there won't be a decision before the middle of September. So that gives them the maximum flexibility and also fits in with the Pirelli tyre deadline, freight deadlines, all those elements. So don't expect any movement on that either. Yes, they're happening, or no, they're not before the middle of September. That's when they'll make a call. Stefano was quite interesting because there's been lots of rumours about alternative venues. There was talk about maybe going back to Austin after Las Vegas if the Middle East races don't happen. But Stefano says it's not on the radar. There's been talk also, and Stefano confirmed for the first time, they considered a double header in Vegas, that you finish the season, 2 races in Vegas, and then you're done and dusted. But it proved too complicated. First of all, it's a big NFL weekend, and F1's well aware that in the chase for eyeballs in America, you're going to be quite brave to go up against the big NFL weekend. So it's elected on that. It's Thanksgiving weekend, which would make things very complicated for Vegas. And also an element of not diluting the impact in America. 3 races is quite a lot already. To have 4 would be a bit excessive to keep interest rolling. So Stefano says if there is a situation where those Middle East races don't happen, we'll come to Europe. So the plan would be to fly home from Vegas. F1 teams then need to complete Brexit paperwork. So there's limits of days where freight's coming in and out. And then you come to Europe. And from what we understand, the lead contender, it's not definite, it's not set in stone yet, is Imola. Yes, it will be cold, but as Stefano says, the 7-8 degrees average temperature for Imola in December is actually warmer than Vegas. So the temperatures aren't a problem. The tyres can cope. The only issue is snow, which cannot be ruled out. And I think Stefano was half joking. He says Pirelli aren't yet ready in a situation to develop some snow tyres for Formula One cars.
Yeah, that would worry me if I was F1, having your big finale and they'll be hoping for a live title decider and you could go there. And if Imola were to be under snow, then that would be a concern. We did go to Imola in 2020 very, very late in the year and that ran okay. And we also had a race at a similar time at the Nürburgring when the Friday was fogged off as well. So you are playing with fire a little bit, or playing with ice, perhaps is what I should say, if you do that race at the end of the year. But it is necessary to have these fallbacks. But of course, John, there's also the concern of next year, the back end of the year. There's the same question. I mean, everybody would be hoping that things have calmed down and cleared up by then. But Formula One, again, can't bank on it, can they?
No, it needs to make decisions. I think in terms of the end of this season, Portimao, for example, it's 17, 18 degrees average temperature that time of year. So it is more logical, but much depends on work they're doing at the track to get it ready for next season. It doesn't want to compromise its return for 27 and 28. So that will be an issue. But F1 doesn't need to rush the decision. It's not going to decide on the Middle East race until September. It can wait to make a call on a December European race. But we are going to get an extra race after Vegas. That is definite. And in terms of longer term, I think if we're sat here 12 months' time in an uncertain situation about Middle East races, then the world's probably got bigger problems to be concerned about than just the location of some F1 races. This is something Stefano was very keen to point out, that there are things that are very important to the F1 world, but equally there are things that are of much bigger relevance to the outside entire world. And I think if we're sat here in 12 months' time with some big uncertainty, I think the location of F1 races won't be top of our priority list.
And it's such a strange scenario that Formula One faces, isn't it? Because there's all this short-term trouble and disruption to the calendar, and we've had quite a bit of that over the past few years. But in the big picture, everywhere seems to want a Grand Prix, because Stefano Domenicali was also talking about all sorts of venues that are wanting to come in. Hockenheim having talks, China wanting more than one race, South America, there was talk of Africa as well. So there's lots and lots of places that want Grand Prix. So they could fill the calendar, the 24 calendar slots, very easily. They could overfill it, and yet they keep having these disruptions that are making it very, very hard to consistently hit that 24 target each year.
Yeah, it's commercial considerations. We well know the Middle East well pay. I think Bahrain and Saudi Arabia may definitely be the two highest paying races of the season. It's combines about $100 million for the pair of them. So it's obvious why F1 wants these races to happen. This is why the Middle East has got the 4 races. It's why they've been attractive partners for Formula One. And sure, lots of places want them. Hockenheim, we learned today, has approached F1 about getting the German Grand Prix back. But there are commercial considerations, as Stefano says. China, they want a second race, but Stefano says you need to make sure the country's ready and the commercial platform's ready to exploit it. He doesn't think they're quite there yet. It's not established enough. Obviously, Argentina is after a race, but again, races need to come up with the race hosting fee. Races aren't cheap these days. It needs to fit Formula One. So it's about balancing what's right for Formula One's bottom line, what fits right for F1's expansion against what's possible. And what was also very interesting was one line from Stefano today where he talked about now the growing importance of Europe, that we've had a run of a shift of a calendar over the past decade, 2 decades away from Europe. Maybe we're shifting back now as the world's economic situation changes.
So that's the situation. It's a movable situation. F1 very much a hostage to goings on in the wider world. But hopefully we've given you an idea of all of those moving parts and the possibilities. But we want to know what you think. What calendar should F1 be aiming to put together? Should they be looking away from races in the Middle East? Or do you think they've become such a core part of F1 you stick with them? Is it impacting your travel plans? Do you want to get your tickets in and book your travel to go to these races and you're not really sure, you're not confident in what you can do? We want to hear all of that in the comments below. And if you want to stay engaged in that conversation, then remember to subscribe so you follow everything from the race.